Before we begin, if you enjoyed deep dives into the hidden stories and unsung heroes of wartime history, consider subscribing to Historia's WWII for more. Near El Alamein, Egypt, 27 August 1942, 1440 hours. The world was a shimmering sheet of white-hot steel. Inside the turret of the Crusader tank, Avenger, Sergeant Ken Mullins tasted the grit of his own sweat-soaked fear. The air was 130 degrees, thick with the stench of diesel fumes, hot oil, and the metallic tang of the breach. "Move it, Alf!" Mullins yelled into the intercom, his voice a dry rasp. "They've got us ranged! Zigzag! For God's sake, zigzag!" "I am zigzagging!" The driver, Alf, screamed back, his voice tinny and panicked. "There's nowhere to hide, Sarge! It's a bloody billiard table!" He was right. Outside the narrow vision slit, the Libyan desert stretched to an infinite, hazy horizon. There was no cover, no hull downs, no shadows. There was only the sun, the sand, and the enemy. The 9th Australian Division, attached to the British 8th Army, was on a probing attack against a suspected Afrika Korps strongpoint. The probe had just hit a wall of steel. Whoosh crack. The sound was instantaneous, violent, and deafening. It wasn't the lazy whoomph of a mortar or the scream of a dive bomber. It was a flat hypersonic crack, like a giant's whip. "6-pounder, left, 2,000, yelled the gunner, Bluey O'Connell, desperately traversing the turret. "You'll never reach him, Bluey. He's..." Whoosh crack. This one was closer. A fountain of sand and black smoke erupted 50 yards to their right, exactly where they would have been if Alf hadn't swerved. Shrapnel, spent but still hot, pinged off the Crusaders' thin armor like angry hornets. "That's not a 6-pounder, Mullins whispered, his blood running cold. He'd heard the stories. The veterans of Tobruk called it the 88. "Tank hit! Tank hit! Braveheart is hit!" The radio squawked, dissolving into static and screaming. Mullins risked a half-second look out of the commander's hatch. 200 yards back, the Crusader tank Braveheart was a pillar of oily black smoke. A man, fully ablaze, was trying to climb out of the driver's hatch before slumping, motionless, over the glacis plate. The tank had been brewed up instantly. The shell had gone straight through the front armor and out the back. "It's the 88s!" Mullins bellowed. "Pull back! Alf, get us out of here! Reverse! Reverse!" Whoosh crack. A blinding flash. A colossal, deafening bang that seemed to come from inside Mullins' own skull. The Avenger lurched violently, as if kicked by a god. The world went black, then red. Mullins was thrown against the turret ring, his head cracking against steel. He came to, coughing, his ears ringing with a high-pitched, agonizing whine. The tank was filled with acrid smoke. "Alf? Bluey?" he croaked. Guns jammed, Sarge." Bluey coughed, his face pale. "We're hit." "Alf, report." No answer. "Alf." Mullins scrambled down into the driver's compartment. Alf was slumped over the controls, his body still. Mullins didn't need to check for a pulse. The shell had punched a neat 3-inch hole through the armor plate where the driver's vision slit was, passing directly through the driver's station. The interior was a ruin of shattered mechanisms and human trauma. "He's gone, Sarge." Bluey's voice was hollow. We're stuck out here." Outside, the crack of the 88 came again, searching for the next target. They were stranded, a steel coffin waiting for the final nail. The trap was set, and they were sitting in the kill zone, helpless. The weapon that had just torn Avenger apart was not by design a tank killer. It was the German 8.8 cm Flak 36, an anti-aircraft gun. But in the unique, featureless geography of the North African desert, it had become the most feared artillery piece of the war. The problem for the Allies was one of physics and terrain. The desert was a vast, open killing floor. A tank, silhouetted against the bright sky, was visible for miles. The standard British tank gun, the 2-pounder, and the slightly better 6-pounder on newer tanks, had an effective range of perhaps 1,000 yards. The 88, with its high-velocity, flat-trajectory shell, could kill a tank from 2,500 yards away, well over a mile. It was a tactical nightmare. German commanders, chief among them Erwin Rommel, would create cauldrons, U-shaped traps. They would lure Allied tanks forward with their lighter panzers, then pull back, drawing the British and Australian armor into a preset screen of deeply dug-in 88s. The Allied tanks would charge, their own guns uselessly out of range, while the 88 gunners, safe behind sandbags, would simply plink them at their leisure. They called it Panzerjagd, tank hunting. For the Allied crews, it was a suicide run. The crews knew the math. They knew that in any engagement, the 88s would get the first shot, and the second, and the third. Often, the first an Allied tanker knew of an 88's presence was the catastrophic, hull-penetrating impact that destroyed his vehicle and his crew. This was the central, horrifying problem facing the 8th Army in late 1942. Morale was shattered. Tank losses were unsustainable. The men of the 9th Australian Division, tough and resourceful, felt they were being fed into a meat grinder they couldn't fight. They weren't being outfought. They were being outranged. How do you fight an enemy you can't see, who can kill you before you can even get close enough to fire back? This was the question that haunted every briefing, every officer, and every grease-stained mechanic in the maintenance bays. Maintenance Bay 4, 9th Division Rear Echelon, 29 August 1942, 04.17 hours. The smell of defeat was welding fumes and burnt paint. Corporal Jack Spanner Riley, a mechanic with the Royal Australian Electrical and Mechanical Engineers, RAME, wiped a greasy rag over his face, leaving a darker smear of grime. In front of him sat the Avenger, or what was left of it. It had been dragged back under cover of darkness. The shell hole in the front was a perfect, chilling circle. The interior. Riley and his team had spent 2 hours cleaning it out. Another one for the boneyard, muttered Private Shaky Pete, his hands trembling as he lit a rolled cigarette. Pete had been a driver until his tank was brewed up 3 weeks ago. He was the only survivor. Now he worked in maintenance. His nerves too shot for the front line. "That's the 5th this week," Riley said, his voice quiet. He wasn't a talker. He was a thinker, a tinkerer. The bay was a graveyard of good intentions. They had tried everything. Failure one, the armor. "See this?" Riley tapped the hull. "They welded extra tread links to the front. The lads call them hope plates. Against an 88, it's like hanging tinfoil. The shell don't even slow down." Failure two, the tactics. The generals had tried night attacks. But driving a 20-ton steel box across uneven desert in total darkness, navigating by stars, was a recipe for chaos. Columns got lost, tanks threw tracks, and by dawn, they were stranded, exposed, and perfect targets for the inevitable German counterattack. Failure 3, the guns. They were hopelessly outmatched. Bluey O'Connell, the gunner from Avenger, who had survived with Sergeant Mullins, was sitting on a crate, nursing a mug of lukewarm tea. "I saw the flash, Spanner," Bluey said, his voice dead. "Miles away. I traversed. I looked through the sight. I couldn't even see the gun. Just a puff of dust." "How do you shoot a puff of dust?" A staff car pulled up. Major Henty, a British officer attached to the Australian Division, got out. He was a good man, but his face was drawn and gray with exhaustion. He walked over to Riley. "Corporal, can this one be salvaged?" Riley shook his head. "Turret rings warped from the impact, sir, and... well, the driver's compartment is gone. Best we can do is strip her for parts." Henty kicked a loose bolt. "Damn it. We're losing them faster than Suez can send them. We can't keep this up. We're sacrificing good men, good crews, for nothing." He looked at the growing line of wrecked Crusaders and Matildas, silhouetted against the pre-dawn glow. "The brass is screaming for a breakthrough, but I can't order men to advance when I know. It's just a shooting gallery." The desperation was palpable. The 88 wasn't just breaking tanks, it was breaking their spirit. Jack Spanner Riley was not a soldier's soldier. He hadn't joined the AIF to be a hero. Back home in the Queensland outback, he was the man who could make a 1920s tractor run on kerosene and prayer. He was a bush mechanic, a master of improvisation, a man who understood the physical world with an intimacy that baffled university-educated engineers. He was quiet, observant, and patient. He saw problems not as walls, but as puzzles. And as he stared at the Avenger, he wasn't just seeing a wrecked tank. He was seeing a puzzle. He walked back to the hole in the glacis plate. It was so precise. The German gunner hadn't guessed. He hadn't bracketed the target. He had aimed at a specific point and hit it from over a mile away. How? With this, Riley said to himself, picking up a shattered piece of the driver's periscope. Optics. He walked out of the bay and into the blazing morning sun. He stared out at the desert, letting his eyes go unfocused. The heat was already rising, creating a shimmering mirage on the horizon. A distant supply truck, miles away, seemed to split in two, its image distorted by the heat haze. Riley had grown up with this. He knew the outback mirage. He knew how it could make you see water where there was only sand, or make a hill seem to float in midair. Bluey said he saw the flash, Riley murmured. But the gunner, the German gunner, he sees us. The 88 gunners were masters of their craft. They used powerful Zeiss rangefinders. They calculated distance, windage, and trajectory. It was a science. And if it's a science, Riley thought, a strange, electrifying idea beginning to form, you can corrupt the data. How do you shoot a puff of dust? Bluey had asked. Riley's eyes narrowed. That's it. What if you give them the wrong target to aim at? What if you can't make the tank invisible, but you can make the German gunner aim? 10 yards to the left? In the desert, rangefinding was everything. The Germans aimed their guns with precision optics. But what if those optics were lied to? What if you could create a false shimmer, a ghost image, that made the German rangefinder lock onto empty sand? He wasn't trying to stop the shell. He was trying to move the shell. He ran back to the bay, his mind racing. He grabbed a piece of chalk and started sketching on the oily floor, much to the confusion of shaky Pete. He drew a tank. Then, 20 feet to its left and 20 feet to its right, he drew two small boxes. What's that, Spanner? Pete asked. That, Riley said, his voice buzzing with an energy no one had ever heard from him, is the Ghost. Field Headquarters, 9th Division Armor, 30 August 1942, tent hours. What? Lieutenant Davies, a fresh-faced officer straight from Staff College, stared at Corporal Riley's chalk-smeared schematic with open disbelief. A lateral distortion projector, sir, Riley said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. The German 88 uses a coincidence rangefinder. It overlays two images. When they line up, he has the range. This system is designed to spoil that, to give him a false image. A shimmer. A shimmer, Davies repeated, his lip curling. With what, Corporal? Magic beans? No, sir. With mirrors, and smoke, and a small charge. Riley laid it out. His idea was to build two pods, mounted on booms that could be swung out from the tank's hull, placing them about 10 yards to either side. Inside each pod, a set of polished angled mirrors from a wrecked scout car to catch the sun and create a blinding, shimmering flash, like the heat haze he'd seen. Alongside it, a small, electrically fired smoke charge, just a puff, to create a dust signature, exactly like a tank's gun firing. The German gunner sees three shimmers, Riley explained, tapping the chalk drawing. The tank in the middle and two ghosts on the flanks. His rangefinder will get a confused reading. He'll aim at the brightest flash or the clearest dust puff. He'll aim at the pod, not the tank. He'll miss, by 10 yards. Lieutenant Davies steepled his fingers. Corporal, this is, without question, the most harebrained, Bush League notion I have ever heard. You want me to authorize stripping valuable periscopes and mortar charges to build a box of mirrors. We are fighting a war, not putting on a magic show. Sir, with respect, what we're doing now isn't working. Riley pushed, his voice hardening. This will. It's preposterous. It will draw more fire, not less. And what happens when the tank turns, eh? These booms will snag on everything. Request denied, Corporal. Get back to your engines. Riley was shaking with frustration. He knew he was right. He collected his drawing and walked out, ignoring the snickers from the lieutenant's staff. He wouldn't give up. He went to the boneyard. He found Major Henty inspecting the latest batch of wrecks. Major, Riley said, his voice low. The lieutenant said no, but I need you to hear me out. Henty, exhausted and desperate, listened. He listened for 10 minutes. He looked at Riley's sketches. He looked at the long, sad line of dead tanks. He saw the logic. It was insane. It was brilliant. It was something. It's madness, Corporal, Henty said softly. It's physics, sir, Riley countered. They're not aiming at us. They're aiming at what their optics tell them is us. Let's lie to their optics. Henty scrubbed his face. The offensive was in 3 days. He was going to lose another dozen tanks. What did he have to lose? I can't authorize a crew, Riley. I can't order men to drive a tank with this contraption bolted to it. It's a death sentence. I don't need a crew, sir, Riley said, his heart pounding. I just need a tank, one that runs, and 2 volunteers. I'll command it myself. Henty stared at the mechanic. A mechanic commanding a tank in combat? It was against every regulation in the King's book. The desperation of the moment, the sheer, audacious, digger spirit of the man. It broke Henty's reserve. A slow, grim smile touched the major's lips. A mechanic. You want to command a tank? Henty chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. Fine, Corporal. There's a Matilda in Bay 3 that's been patched a dozen times. She's all yours. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a theatrical whisper that was pure mockery, laced with a tiny, desperate thread of hope. You get that thing to work. You drive this tank and you'll earn a medal. You get it wrong, and you'll be digging latrines in Cairo until 1945. Or more likely, you'll be dead. Now get out of my sight. The Boneyard, 30 August 1942, 18 hours. The tank Major Henty had gifted them was a Matilda II, an infantry tank. Slow, heavy, and already obsolete, this one, nicknamed the Iron Duchess, was a veteran of Tobruk and a dozen smaller scraps. Her hull was pockmarked with scars from anti-tank rifles and machine gun fire. She was perfect. She'll do, Riley said, patting the thick-skinned beast. His volunteers were the only 2 men mad enough to say yes. Shaky Pete, the driver with shattered nerves, and Bluey O'Connell, the gunner who had survived Avenger. You're barmy, Spanner, Bluey said, chewing on a matchstick. Completely, totally, 100% off your rocker. That's why I'm in. Got nothing better to do than get shot at. Might as well do it for a laugh. As long as I'm in the driver's seat, Pete stammered, his hands visibly shaking. I can't be on the outside. I'll drive. Right, Riley said. Let's get to work. For 48 hours, they worked without sleep. The Boneyard became their workshop. The booms Riley and Bluey salvaged 2 long, heavy-gauge steel tubes from a destroyed German half-track. They welded them to hinges on the Matilda's side skirts. A simple rope and pulley system, operated from the commander's hatch, would deploy them. The pods. They built 2 small, rough boxes from scrap armor plate. Jury-rigged, but it'll stop shrapnel, Riley muttered. The mirrors. There were no periscopes left. Riley improvised. He took the polished aluminum interior lining from a downed Messerschmitt's cockpit and bent it into a series of angled convex shimmer plates. They wouldn't just reflect the sun, they'd scatter it, creating a dazzling, unfocused glare. The smoke. They couldn't get mortar charges. Instead, Riley took the small pyrotechnic charges from signal flares and wired them to a plunger box scavenged from a field telephone. The flash. Bluey, a man of simple pleasures, had an idea. What about magnesium, Spanner? From a recce plane's photo flash? They found a crate of them. Rigged to the same circuit, the magnesium would create an intense white flash, mimicking the bark of a tank's main gun. By the dawn of September 1st, the Iron Duchess was transformed. She looked absurd, like a metal beetle with 2 ungainly 20-foot feelers resting on her hull. Lieutenant Davies walked by, saw the creation, and laughed out loud. Good luck, Corporal, he sneered. Try not to poke your own eye out. Riley just checked his wiring. Pete, start her up. Bluey, get in the turret. We've got a test to run. Artillery range, C. Fursard, September 1942, 13 hours. The test was high stakes. Major Henty had come to watch, bringing with him a skeptical artillery captain. The target is the Duchess, Henty explained, his binoculars trained on the tank half a mile away. Captain, I want you to use your 25-pounder, not to hit him, God forbid, but to range him. Tell me the instant you have a firing solution. Easy work, Major, the captain said, looking through his own artillery rangefinder. He's sitting broadside. Range, 100 yards. Solution locked. Right, Henty spoke into the field radio. Riley, you're clear to proceed. Advance 50 yards and deploy your device. Roger, Major. Riley's voice crackled back. Inside the Duchess, it was hell. The ancient engine roared, filling the compartment with fumes. Pete, steady as she goes, Riley ordered. Bluey, stand by the triggers. The tank lurched forward. Now, Spanner? Pete's voice was tight. Now, Riley yelled. From his hatch, he and Bluey hauled on the ropes. The heavy steel booms swung out with a groan, locking into place. The Duchess now had a 50-foot wingspan. Deploying system! Riley yelled into the radio. He looked at Bluey. Hit the left! Bluey thumbed the switch. Whoosh, bam! 20 feet to the tank's left, the magnesium charge went off with a brilliant white flash, followed instantly by a puff of gray smoke. The aluminum plates caught the high noon sun and sent a blinding, pulsating glare back toward the observation post. At the OP, the artillery captain recoiled from his rangefinder. My God, he yelped, rubbing his eye. What was that? The glare... It split the image. What's the range, Captain? Henty asked, his heart hammering. I don't know, the captain said, frustrated. He put his eye back to the sight. I'm getting 3 readings, one at 1,100 yards, one at 1,075. The shimmer is... Wait, Riley, Henty ordered. Deploy the right. Hitting the right, came the reply. Whoosh, bam, another flash, this time on the right flank. The artillery captain threw his hands up. It's impossible. The heat from those flashes, the smoke. My rangefinder is useless. I have no clear target. It looks like 3 tanks in a cloud of dust. I can't get a solution. I'd be wasting shells. Henty lowered his binoculars. A slow, stunned smile spread across his face. Bloody hell, he whispered. The mad bastard. It actually works. Radio silence, Henty ordered, his voice suddenly sharp and professional. Captain, not a word of this. Corporal Riley, he said into the radio, his voice shaking with suppressed excitement. Bring her home. You have a new assignment. Operation Bulldog, fictional, 3rd and September 1942, 07:15 hours. The objective was a small ridge known as Point 203, held by an Italian infantry company and, crucially, a battery of 388s. Twice, British tanks had tried to take it. Twice, they had been annihilated. Now, it was the 9th Division's turn. The Iron Duchess, now unofficially christened the Ghost, sat at the head of a company of 12 Crusader tanks. Major Henty was in the command tank Caesar just behind. Radio check, Ghost. Henty's voice came over the net. Ghost reads you, Sunray, Riley replied, his throat dry. He was in the commander's hatch, his mechanic's overalls traded for a tanker's helmet. He felt like an imposter. System is green. All call signs follow Ghost's lead, Henty ordered. Ghost, you are the bait. Draw their fire. We'll be right behind you to exploit the gap. Good luck, Corporal. Riley looked at his crew. Pete was pale and drenched in sweat, but his hands were steady on the controls. Bluey was loading a solid shot round into the breech, his movements economical and calm. Right, lads, Riley said, his voice cracking. Let's go show 'em. Move out! Pete engaged the gears, and the Duchess crawled over the starting line. The desert was quiet. Too quiet. They advanced for 5 minutes. The ridge grew closer. 3,000 yards, 500 yards. This is it, Spanner, Bluey murmured, his eye pressed to the gunner's sight. The killing zone. As if summoned, the unmistakable crack of an 88 split the morning. A shell screamed past, high and to the right. A ranging shot. They see us, Riley said. Deploy the booms. Bluey, stand by. With a groan, the feelers swung out. Crack. This one was closer. A plume of sand erupted 100 yards in front. They were bracketing. The next one would be a hit. Pete, steady, straight at him, Riley commanded. Bluey, hit the left and right. Now! Bluey slammed his thumbs onto the 2 triggers. Foosh bam, foosh bam. Simultaneously, 20 feet to their left and 20 feet to their right, the ghosts were born. 2 blinding flashes of magnesium. 2 puffs of smoke, 2 dazzling shimmers from the aluminum plates. From the German perspective on point 203, the single slow-moving Matilda had suddenly, impossibly, become 3 targets in a cloud of smoke and light. Crack. A shell shrieked past and Riley felt the concussion. It exploded violently, 10 yards to their left, precisely where the decoy had flashed. A direct hit on an empty patch of sand. "It worked!" Pete screamed. "He missed! He missed!" "Reloading decoys!" WWII yelled, his hands flying as he slammed new charges into the pod's firing tubes. A modification they'd added. Crack. Another shell, this time 10 yards to the right. The German gunner was chasing ghosts, confused by the multiple flashes. "Radio from Sunray," Riley heard in his headset. "My God, Ghost, it's working. They're firing at nothing. All stations, charge, go, go, go." The Crusaders surged past the Duchess, engines roaring. The 88s, their gunners panicking, fired again. Crack, crack. Both shells went wide, aimed at the phantom flashes Riley was deploying. "Ghost, you've done it!" Henty roared over the radio. "They're blind! The Crusaders are in! They're on the ridge!" The 88 battery, designed for long-range duels, was suddenly swarmed by a dozen fast-moving tanks. The fight was short and brutal. Within 10 minutes, the radio crackled again. "Point 203 is taken. The 88s are neutralized." Repeat. "The 88s are neutralized." Silence fell over the battlefield, broken only by the ping of cooling engines. Riley, Pete, and WWII sat inside their steel box, stunned, shaking, and very much alive. They had crossed the killing zone and hadn't taken a single scratch. 8th Army HQ near WWII Ridge, 10th of September 1942. The news traveled fast. It didn't just travel, it exploded. A digger mechanic had built a device out of scrap metal that could blind the 88s. Tank crews who had been living on borrowed time saw it as a miracle. Engineers from the Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers, REME, descended on Riley's workshop. They measured, sketched, and photographed the Duchess and her booms. They refined the design, making the pods easier to reload and the booms stronger. Within a week, a standardized kit, officially designated the Optical Countermeasure Lateral (MKY), was in production in the rear area workshops. The tank crews, with their typical gallows humor, had a better name for it. They called it the Riley Ghost. "We're painting him on the hulls," Sergeant Mullins, now commanding a new tank, told Riley, showing him a crude white ghost painted on his turret. "It's good luck, Spanner. You've given us a bloody chance." The Ghost began to appear on tanks all across the 9th Division, and soon British units were requesting them. The tactical doctrine changed. Ghost tanks, usually the heavier, slower Matildas and Valentines, were designated as bait. They would advance first, activate the shimmer, and draw the 88's fire, allowing the faster Crusaders to flank the enemy positions. Losses plummeted. Not to zero, war is never that simple. But the 88's reign of terror was broken. A week later, Riley, his overalls still stained with grease, was told to report to Major Henty's tent. He walked in, expecting new orders for his workshop. Instead, he found Major Henty and a tall, stern-looking man with a general's insignia. "Corporal Riley," Henty said, a proud smile on his face. "This is General Sir Bernard Montgomery." Riley's jaw nearly hit the floor. He snapped to the sloppiest salute of his career. Montgomery, the new commander of the 8th Army, looked Riley up and down. He wasn't a man for pomp. "So," Montgomery said, his voice sharp and nasal, "you're the mechanic who's been playing tricks on Rommel." I suppose so, sir," Riley stammered. "Henty tells me you built it from scrap." "Yes, sir. Just parts we had." "Good. That's the stuff. Resourcefulness, ingenuity." Montgomery paced the tent. "The 88 is a problem of optics, you said. You didn't fight the gun, you fought the gunner." "That's good thinking, Riley. Very good indeed." He stopped and fixed Riley with an intense stare. "We're planning a major offensive, a colossal crack, as it were. Your Ghost is going to play a vital part. We're fitting it to every lead tank in the XXX Corps. I expect you to oversee the training, Corporal. See that it's done right." "Yes, sir." "Good." Montgomery nodded, turning to leave. "Carry on." As the general left, Riley stood in a daze. Major Henty clapped him on the shoulder. "Well, Corporal," Henty grinned, "you're not just a mechanic anymore. You're a boffin." The Riley Ghost was not a silver bullet. It was a tool, and like any tool, it was only as good as the men using it. The cat-and-mouse game of the Desert War simply evolved. The Australian Diggers and British Tommies proved endlessly creative. The Ghost Truck. One enterprising sergeant mounted 3 Ghost systems on the beds of 2-ton trucks. At night, he'd drive them 5 miles south of the main line and activate them. German artillery, believing they were sighting a major tank column, would shell the empty desert for hours, wasting thousands of rounds of ammunition. The flicker system. Crews learned not to just turn the decoys on, but to flicker them, left, then right, then left again, making it impossible for the 88 gunner to settle on a target. The ambush. In one instance, a squadron of Crusaders hid in a shallow wadi, while a single Ghost Matilda drove back and forth in the open. When the 88s revealed their positions by firing at the Ghost, the Crusaders burst from cover and destroyed them. The Germans, masters of adaptation, did not sit idle. An intelligence report captured from a Panzer command vehicle showed they were catching on. Warning: Allied tanks, primarily Matilda types, are deploying a new optical distortion system, Gespenst projector. Gunners report false flashes and ghost images at ranges exceeding 1,500 milliliters. The system appears to use magnesium flares and mirrors. Countermeasure: gunners are ordered to hold fire until target is visually confirmed or is at a range of 1,000 milliliters or less. Fire at the center mass of the shimmer cluster, not the flashes. Use ranging fire from multiple guns to bracket the target before using armor-piercing rounds. The game had changed. The Ghost no longer guaranteed invulnerability, but it had bought the Allies something far more precious: time. It forced the 8 in an instant. The German gunner's greatest advantage, his superior range, was compromised. He now had to wait. And in a tank battle, the crew that has to wait is the crew that dies. Success came with a price. Corporal Jack Spanner Riley was no longer a mechanic, he was an advisor. He was pulled from his workshop, from the greasy, tactile world of engines and steel he understood, and placed in a stuffy tent at Corps headquarters. He was in charge of Ghost unit training and supply. It was a logistical nightmare. "We're out of magnesium, sir," a quartermaster would tell him. "The photo recon units are screaming. You've used their entire stock." "This wiring is too thin, Corporal," a REM sergeant complained. "It's melting under the desert sun. We need rubber-insulated cable." Riley was a tinkerer, not a bureaucrat. He found himself drowning in paperwork, requisitions, and the endless petty squabbles of rank. He hated it. He missed the simple, honest work of fixing a gearbox. But the true cost was heavier. Near Tel El Asa, 21st in October 1942, 15:30 hours, Riley was forward, checking the installation on a new squadron of Grant tanks. A young, arrogant lieutenant, barely 20, was commanding the lead tank. "Don't you worry, Corporal," the lieutenant said, slapping the Ghost pod on his tank. "With this thing, we're invincible. We'll charge right through them." "Sir, that's not how it works," Riley said urgently. "It's not a shield. It's a distraction. You still have to use the terrain. You still have to—" Yes, thank you, Corporal." The lieutenant cut him off, eager to seem brave. "We know what to do." An hour later, Riley watched from an observation post. The attack went in. The young lieutenant, filled with a dangerous false confidence, did exactly what Riley had told him not to. He didn't flicker the system. He just turned it on and charged, straight at a known 88 position, without coordinating with his flank. The German gunner, following his new orders, ignored the Ghosts. He waited. 1,500, 1,200, 1,000. At 900 meters, the German fired once at the center mass. The shell hit the Grant's high-profile hull. The tank exploded in a catastrophic fireball. Riley watched, his stomach turning to ice. He was close enough to hear the screams. That night, he sat in Major Henty's tent, his head in his hands, unresponsive. I saw it, Major," Riley whispered, his voice thick. He thought it made him bulletproof. I got him killed. My bloody invention, it got him killed." Henty poured 2 glasses of whiskey. He handed one to Riley. "The lieutenant got himself killed, Jack," Henty said softly, using his first name for the first time. "He died of stupidity, not of your invention." "But he was so confident." "Overconfidence," Henty said, swirling his glass. "It's as deadly as an 88. You've saved hundreds of lives, Jack. Hundreds. You've given us a chance to win this. War just finds new ways to be cruel. You can't take the blame for every fool who misuses your work. You're a mechanic, not a god." Riley looked at his grease-stained hands. He had wanted to save lives. He never imagined he could be responsible for ending them too. The weight of his success was a burden he would carry long after the grease washed off. El Alamein, Egypt, 23 October 1942, 21:40 hours. The night was shattered by a man-made volcano. 1,000 Allied guns opened fire simultaneously, beginning the Second Battle of El Alamein. As the barrage lifted, Operation Lightfoot began. The infantry advanced, and with them, the tanks. At the head of the XXX Corps' armored thrust were the Ghost tanks. In the dark, the magnesium flashes and smoke puffs were even more effective. German 88 gunners, peering through the dust and artillery smoke, were met with a bewildering array of phantom targets. They fired wildly, their positions revealed by their own muzzle flashes, which were then systematically destroyed by Allied artillery. Riley's Ghost system was not the only factor, but it was a crucial one. It jinked the 88's aim, it drew their fire, and it bought precious minutes for the sappers to clear paths through the Devil's Gardens, Rommel's dense minefields. For 12 brutal days the battle raged. The Riley Ghost became a vital part of the assault. The bait and flank tactic, which Riley had proven at point 203, was used on a massive scale. When the Axis line finally broke, and Rommel's army began its long, desperate retreat across Libya, the tide of the war in Africa had turned. Field Parade Ground, 15th of December 1942. The 9th Australian Division was being pulled from the line, heading home to face a new enemy in the Pacific. But first, there was a ceremony. Corporal Jack Spanner. Riley stood, awkward and stiff, in his best-pressed uniform. For conspicuous gallantry and ingenuity in the face of the enemy, the adjutant read, "Corporal Jack T. Riley of the Royal Australian Electrical and Mechanical Engineers devised and field-tested a novel countermeasures system under direct enemy fire. This system proved vital in neutralizing the enemy's long-range anti-tank defenses and was instrumental in the success of the El Alamein campaign. His Majesty is pleased to award the Distinguished Conduct Medal." General Montgomery himself pinned the medal on Riley's chest. Afterward, Major Henty, who was also being promoted and transferred, found Riley by the Iron Duchess, which was being retired as a training vehicle. "Well, Corporal," Henty said, a wide, genuine smile on his face. "I seem to recall a conversation." Riley looked at the medal, then at the Major. Henty stuck out his hand. "You drove the tank, and you bloody well earned your medal." Toowoomba, Queensland, Australia, 1985. The sign on the large corrugated iron shed read, "Riley and Sons, Tractor and Auto." Inside, an old man with hands permanently stained by oil and sunspots was patiently tinkering with a Massey Ferguson carburetor. Jack Spanner. Riley had returned from the war in 1944. He had fought in New Guinea, where his ghosts were useless in the jungle. He went back to being a mechanic, a good one. He married, had 2 sons, and built the biggest repair shop in the Darling Downs. He never spoke of the war, not of the 88s, not of the Ghost, not of the medal that sat in a dusty biscuit tin in his study. To his grandkids, he was just Pop, the quiet man who could fix anything. His invention, the Riley Ghost, faded into history. As technology advanced, it was replaced by sophisticated thermal blankets, radar-absorbent paint, and electronic countermeasures. It became a footnote in dense regimental histories, listed as improvised optical decoys. In 1986, a young historian from the Australian War Memorial, researching the North African campaign, tracked Jack down. He sat with him in his workshop, the smell of diesel and dry grass in the air. "Mr. Riley?" the historian asked, a tape recorder running. "The official records are Vague. They mention your DCM, but the reports on the ghost system are classified or lost. The British took most of the credit. Can you tell me what really happened? Jack Riley stopped his work. He looked out the wide door of his shed, staring at the distant, shimmering heat haze rising from the black soil plains. It looked just like the desert. He was silent for a full minute. The brass? They thought they could solve it with more steel, Jack said, his voice a low, gravelly rasp. They sent us better tanks. The 88 just punched through those too. They didn't understand. He picked up a wrench, his hands moving with old, certain memory. They didn't understand the desert. They were fighting the tank. But we were fighting the light. The 88 gunner, he was a scientist. He believed what he saw. So, we just had to teach him to see things that weren't there. He looked at the young historian, his eyes clear and sharp. The boffins in Cairo and London, they were trying to build a better wall. We were just a bunch of grease monkeys. We just built a better shadow. Sometimes a shadow is all you need.